variables, and thirdly, execute your plan successfully. It's really that straightforward, but most people don't even get past step one. To be honest, 30% of people have probably clicked off this video, probably because retirement sounds too old school for them. However, you might not actually want to retire early. I'll explain why towards the end. Well, that's for the few of you that make it that far. Step one, calculate the real numbers. How much do I need to retire? This is one of the most searched questions on the internet, and no one seems to be able to give the real answer. It's no surprise that lots of people are turning to the internet, as the school system has left us in the dark. They're only interested in pushing us into the workforce so that society can exploit us for our time and labour. If most people actually knew the answer to how much they need to retire, then there'd probably be an uproar. That's because millennials and Gen Zs are reportedly going to have to work longer than any other generation. The sad truth is many people are deluded. Some think they'll enjoy round-the-world cruises on the back of saving $50 a month. Others believe they'll need so much money that quitting work is an unrealistic fantasy. Most people are hurtling towards a harsh reality check without even knowing it. It's not their fault, as they've been set up to fail. Retirement was much more achievable in my day. However, that's why it's so important to calculate the real numbers now so you're at an advantage. This is kind of like the first step of any road trip, setting the destination on your navigation system. Without it, how are you going to head in the right direction? Right, I'm going to cut through all the confusion online. You just need to focus on the rule of 300. This rule is so powerful that it allows you to jump forward in time and calculate how much money future you will need to quit your job and still pay the bills. It's simple. All you have to do is add up your monthly expenses and multiply them by 300. This means if you currently spend $1,000 per month, then you'll need $300,000 saved. If you spend $1,500 a month, this will mean you need $450,000 in your account. If you spend $3,000 a month, you'll require $900,000 and so on. You get the idea. Now I know what you're thinking. How much? But let's say you do need $900,000. You don't have to save all of that. I'll reveal later how you can use the power of compound interest and only have to save around $110,000. The rule of 300 is based on the ability to safely withdraw 4% per year from your savings. The idea is that if you put your money in the correct places, then it will grow by more than 4% per year, allowing you to take from your pot without it running out. It's a bit like Hermione's magic bag in Harry Potter. I know this sounds great, but it's very important. This is just a rule of thumb and not scientific law like gravity. I mean, it's pretty impossible to accurately predict the future, as there are so many different factors that we can't take into account. If anyone tells you otherwise, then they're trying to sell you something. So yes, stock market conditions and inflation could have an impact on your final freedom figure. However, I still think it's a good idea to use the rule of 300 as a guide and adapt it as you go. Now you've figured out your destination, you can start increasing your odds in getting there. Which brings me on to step 2. Manage the variables. Just as you need to use the steering wheel, brakes and accelerator in a car to navigate the roads, you need to use these 5 variables to achieve your retirement goal. Variable 1 is, of course, income. I highly suggest that you increase your income as soon as possible. This is your accelerator, and if you're making more than the average, you'll be able to retire before most people. In my late teens, I had an income problem. After leaving school at 16, I just wasn't making enough money to pay my rent and go out with my friends, let alone save for retirement, so I devised a plan to get a pay rise. You see, I was working part-time in a radio-controlled model shop, earning next to nothing. I thought to myself, how can I get the owner to pay me more for the same work? For the next couple of weeks, I worked my socks off and I kept track of all the sales I made. I remember writing down every detail in a little notepad. When I got a chance, I sat down and I looked at all my notes and compared them with what the shop had sold in that period. One thing became very obvious. I was making all the radio-controlled helicopter sales because of my expertise in flying them. That's when it hit me. I was valuable to my boss because without me, he couldn't sell any helicopters. Now I had this information, I felt confident I could approach him and ask for a raise. I clearly explained my value to the business and asked for the increase in pay I wanted. I remember him staring at me blankly for a couple of seconds. I thought I'd offended him until he let out a little grunt and a nod of his head, agreeing to pay me exactly what I'd asked for. Although this was a long time ago, the principle remains the same now. If you want to increase your income, then you need some kind of leverage. To have this, you need to become valuable. Maybe you could learn some high income skills such as sales and marketing, or alternatively, start some kind of side hustle. However, it actually doesn't matter how much you earn, it's all about how much you save, and that brings me on to variable 2, expenses. Even if you were accelerating at full speed in a Formula One car, if you had a massive parachute attached to your rear wing, then you aren't going anywhere fast. This is exactly what it's like having a good income with too many expenses. Look, I'm not one of those online people that's going to tell you to stop buying Starbucks and enjoying life. I think that's a pretty sad way to live if you like those things. This variable is more about cutting out the things you couldn't care less for. This is actually the perfect time to come back to the rule of 300. Let's say you spend $15 per month on Netflix. If we multiply that by 300, you'll see that you actually need $4,500 saved in your retirement pot to keep watching indefinitely. Well, this is assuming the price doesn't go up, which it most certainly will. Most people have little monthly expenses that they don't really care about as they seem so small, but if you apply them to the rule of 300, then those small expenses actually add up very quickly. As well as cutting out little expenses, I also highly suggest being smart about the larger ones. I'm talking about rent, mortgages and car payments. These are the biggest silent wealth killers as they're a huge drain on your finances every single month. But there are a few ways to get around them. The first is known as house hacking. This is when you buy a house and rent out part of it to a roommate in order to cover the mortgage. In America, you can also buy something called a duplex, which is 2 separate living accommodations in one house, allowing you to live in one side of the house and rent out the other. The next is rent hacking. This is simply renting out a house and then subletting individual rooms to different people to cover all of your costs. But before you start doing this, make sure to clear it with your landlord. The third is car hacking. This is when you buy a car that has lost most of its value already, drive it around for a couple of years and then sell it for almost what you paid for it and repeat the process. If you successfully manage to drive down your expenses and still live a great life, then you can start thinking about variable 3, debt. A lot of people aren't going to like this one, but you need to master debt. Some people are totally against it, while others are way too reckless. I've always been somewhere in between the two extremes. It's kind of like the fuel in your car. It can be very useful, but it can also explode if you're not careful. Managing debt is crucial for retirement planning because carrying too much bad debt can eat away at your savings and make it difficult to achieve your retirement goals. On the other hand, using good debt strategically can help you build wealth and increase your income, which can lead to an earlier retirement. It's important to understand the difference between the two and make smart decisions about when and how to use debt. Put simply, good debt is when you borrow money to buy things that will make more money in the future, like buying a house and renting it out. Bad debt is when you borrow money to buy things you don't make any money on, like using a credit card to buy clothes, expensive holidays, or a car that you don't need. But here's the real kicker. In order to get good debt, you need to have a good credit score. And the best way to do this is to actually own a credit card. You can put little expenses on it and pay it off in full at the end of each month. This will mean you never pay any interest and build a good score for the future. But like I said, the only reason to have good debt is to buy assets, which brings me on to variable 4, investing. Investing is important for retirement because it can allow your money to grow faster than it would if you simply just saved it. It's kind of like the boost pads you go over when playing Mario Kart. With the right investments, your money can grow at more than 4% per year, which is the amount you can safely withdraw from your savings if you're using the rule of 300. I'm not a financial advisor, however, I've always invested consistently into the S&P 500, which is an index fund that includes the top publicly traded companies in the USA. which has historically averaged a return of 8% per year. I mean, if you were to invest $200 per month for 45 years, which equates to $108,000 at an average return of 8% per year, then you would have a total of $1,054,907. That's the power of compound interest. But where can you start investing? Well, it's a lot easier than it was back in my day, as you can do it all from your phone. There are various different apps. I'll leave some of the links down below. One of my favorites is Lightyear, and they are also kindly sponsoring today's video. Lightyear is looking to give every European low cost and convenient access to the world's stock markets, and they're really great at what they do. The app is super user friendly, making it perfect for both advanced and novice investors. Lightyear is available on mobile and web platforms, allowing for us. I was earning less than $2 an hour, working day and night just to make ends meet. I wanted to be rich so badly, but felt like it was never going to happen to me. Little did I know, there were some clear signs that I was going to become rich, and I've seen this time and time again over the years when helping others achieve their goals. In the past, I've used these signs as a little checklist to see if it's worth mentoring someone. So grab a pen and paper and let's see how many you have. Let me know in the comments if you check all 7. Number 1, you know that the phrase money won't fix your problems is a load of rubbish. There's nothing worse than someone rich saying money won't fix your problems. Trust me, I've been there. You see, I believe there are 2 different types of problems we all face. The first type is your basic needs. These are things like water, housing, healthcare and food. Now, if you're facing the first type of problems, then the answer to all of these is clear. You need to earn more money. Everything you're stressing about can be solved with more money. When you fix the basic needs, your focus shifts onto type 2, which is the abstract problems. These are things money definitely can't fix, such as love, happiness and fulfillment. For me, that's always been about spending time with my family, enjoying my hobbies, my interests, and running a business that I'm truly passionate about. So you can definitely be broke but happy. You can also be rich but sad. However, wouldn't you prefer to be rich and happy? The puppet masters have brainwashed everyday people into believing that they don't actually want money, all while they trade years of their life working a job they hate for a tiny salary. If I see that someone actually buys into the thinking that money isn't desirable, then I can't see how they're ever going to make enough to be rich. Even when I was completely broke, I didn't ever think this way. If you're able to ignore all of this, then you're on the right track. Number 2, when you see an obstacle, you overcome it. Successful people focus on the opportunities rather than the things holding them back. Now is one of the best times to start a new side hustle, as there are so many different industries booming online. Let's say you have the most amazing business idea that has the potential to make you millions of dollars, but you never act on it because too many things are standing in your way. How much is that idea actually worth to you? Well, the answer is absolutely nothing if you're not going to work on it. Have you ever chatted with a friend and they say, you know what, I've got the best business idea in the world. They're extremely motivated, certain that this will make them richer than rich itself. You then meet up with them 6 months later down the line and you ask them, how's everything going? And you're really excited for them. Oh, I haven't started yet. And the reason is, oh, because the government, my job, the economy. They've got excuse after excuse. The list goes on and on. When most people see a problem, they say it's bad luck. They quit and they stop trying. When rich people run into problems, they might scratch their heads for a while, but they don't give up. They strike when they have the most passion and the most motivation. The longer you leave an idea stuck up here in your head, the longer you'll have time to convince yourself that it'll never work. So if you're the type to just get going and sort the problems as you go, then there's a high chance you'll become rich. Number 3, you prioritize buying assets when possible. When was the last time you thought about buying something and took the time to decide if the item was going to help bring money into your life or drain money away from your life? We're constantly living on a seesaw. On one side, you've got fancy cars, designer clothes, and unnecessary gadgets. On the other side, we've got rental properties, watches, and stocks. By taking advantage of when the economy is on its knees and buying up lots of long-term assets, you could easily set yourself up financially for the rest of your life. The first $100,000 is the hardest money you'll ever earn. The truth is that getting your money to work for you and not the other way around is the only way to achieve real long-term wealth. I'm sure you've heard this before. However, I know that sometimes it can feel less scary just letting your money sit in a savings account rather than investing it elsewhere. If this is how you feel, then money market funds might be a good option for you. They normally have better interest rates than savings accounts while not being as risky as investing in stocks. Instead, these money market funds invest in high quality, short-term debt from governments, banks or corporations. I like investing some of my money in these funds on Lightyear because I can easily draw it out when I need to rather than having to worry about the ups and downs of the stock market. The interest, otherwise known as the yield, is paid into my account on the first of every month. However, the interest amount does change daily, so it's not super predictable, just like the British weather. You can do the same if you live in the UK or one of these countries, because on apps like the one I just mentioned called Lightyear, you have access to AAA rated BlackRock money market funds and can start investing from just £1, euro or dollar. So if this interests you, feel free to use my code Tilbury to get a free $10 fractional share when you sign up for Lightyear. Using this affiliate link and code is also a great way to support this channel, as I'm able to put the commissions we receive into creating more videos. And let me remind you, investing always carries a risk, and the value of any investment can decrease as well as increase, so be sure to invest wisely and do your research. Number 4, you know there is so much more to learn. How many people do you know that when they have a couple of days off or during the evening spend all their spare time playing video games and watching Netflix? I'm willing to bet quite a few. Look, there is nothing wrong with binging a TV series once in a while. I'm talking about the people that don't watch or read anything educational. They falsely believe that education stops when you leave school. To be honest, these people are extremely arrogant and they don't know it. They think getting rich is down to luck because they haven't learned enough to spot the strategic steps that every self-made millionaire takes. They would rather critique others and then escape to a fantasy land where they don't have to think about their problems. But you know what? There'll be too much competition in the online space. Well, teenagers have an advantage as they understand the online world better than anyone else. It's just second nature. But Mark, I don't know what to do. Well, that's why I'm going to be revealing the 7.5 best paid online jobs for teenagers. And this isn't any old list. For each one, I'm going to provide a real life example of a teenager currently killing it in that job. Job 1 is an advertising deal broker. Teenagers doing this job earn as much as $100,000 to $120,000 per year. In 2021, I bought a Tesla Model 3 and I set myself a bit of a challenge. I wanted to see if it was possible to use lots of different side hustles to earn back the price of the car. One of the ideas my son and I came up with was to get it wrapped like a race car, which would involve securing paid advertisements. At this point, we received a cold email from a teenager called Christian, completely out of the blue, who said that he was able to secure the sponsorship we required for a 30% commission. Christian managed to get an offer of $30,000 on the table. Had we accepted this deal, he would have made a sweet $9,000 for essentially matching us with the brand and acting as the middleman. In the end, Curtis managed to secure a different deal with Public.com, so we went with them. However, Christian has managed to secure many of these deals in the past. That's why we can still offer you a free stock worth all the way up to $1,000 from Public with the link in the description. Christian told me that the best way to be successful with this job is to make friends in the right places. He described it a lot like a jungle, where one branch would lead to the next one and so on. Once you start working with one big company, it becomes a lot easier as you can reference them as a past client and therefore demonstrate that you have experience in the areas that they require. So how does he do it? He uses different software to get the email addresses of influencers and just fires off messages until he gets a bite. Then he evaluates the needs of the clients that contact him back and runs a similar campaign focused on reaching out to brands on the influencer's behalf. It kind of reminds me of the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, where Dale Carnegie Carnegie talks about sending mail to powerful people and getting replies, only the modern day version. If we learn anything from Christian, it's the power of a good reference and relationships. Always do your best work because you never know where something might lead in the future. Job 2 is a Discord community manager for Web3. These teens make more than $70,000 a year, depending on their multitasking ability. When it comes to marketing for Gen Z, community is everything. Every brand under the sun is trying to build a community around their product. This is actually the main reason why Gymshark have set up their first store in London.
The real purpose of this store needs to be to really cultivate the Gymshark community and connect with people.
Now, if you've ever used Discord, then you've probably met a community manager. They're like the glue that holds everything together. I know a guy called Harry who hires community managers. He said that he wouldn't bat an eyelid at paying more than $2,000 per week if they were good at the job and represented the brand in a positive light. Additionally, if you're good at multitasking, there's nothing stopping you from being a community manager for 3 or 4 projects at the same time, which means big money. The job of the community manager is to be on the front line. You have to tell the story of the brand, be customer service and support, as well as supporting people when they're down and paying attention to global events. You need to be able to pause your schedule, be active when people are looking for you, and listen when people need your attention. Above all, you have to be the voice of the CEO, but not always speak on behalf of the company. Job 3 is writing scripts for content creators. These teens can earn upwards of $100,000, but can go a lot higher depending on the type of content and your experience. Words can make you sound smart, or they can do the opposite, depending on how they're deployed. That's why businesses hire copywriters, basically salesmen in print. Copywriters can make insane amounts of money. I'm talking over $500 an hour in many cases. It all depends on how good you are at making connections, your skill with words, and how fast you can write. Some charge as much as $50,000 for just one web page. You may be thinking, why so much? Well, it's all about value. If you charge $50,000 for a web page and it results in a business monthly profit going from $200,000 to $400,000, wouldn't you say it's worth it? It's all about leverage, making rich clients even richer, then asking for your slice of the pie. And it's not just websites either. People need quality writers for all sorts of things. Everything from TikTok scripts to threads on Twitter. Content is king, and the magician behind all of this is often the writer. I know a guy named Adam. He started off writing blog posts about his travels to earn passive income and live anywhere in the world. This later led him to working as a copywriter for large influencers. He followed the same strategy as Christian, got one client, which led to another, and so on. He told me when he offers a service, he always tries to be exclusive and do it in a way that no one else could. There's always going to be someone cheaper than you, but not always someone more expensive. Find the client who can afford to pay the premium, then learn to offer a world-class service. Job 4 is a SaaS software coder. These teens can earn between $60,000 and $80,000 a year. A guy called Sam King came on my podcast, Strike It Big, and explained how he built a multi-million-dollar business without ever having a normal job. Instead of building a traditional business, he decided to build a SaaS company. This stands for Software as a Service. Just think of how many online tools you use on a daily basis. I know I love Notion, MailChimp, Photoshop, and many. A multi-millionaire by the age of 35, and how you can do the exact same thing. So I've got a simple question for you. Do you want to be rich and have the freedom that comes with being financially stable? Many people do. Why do you think there's so many get-rich-quick schemes out there? Most people, though, unfortunately have a lottery mentality. They're just waiting for the magic fairy to come down and hand them $1 million. Do I look like the magic fairy to you? If the answer is no, and I really hope it is no, then smash that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. The truth is, lots of people think that winning a chunk of money will make all your problems just disappear. But they'll be in for an absolute shock. Without the correct investing and mindset strategies, it will be all gone, and in no time you'll be back to square one. You need a solid, consistent investment plan which gradually builds your wealth over time. Long-term investing will give great returns. When I was younger, I always wanted to be a race car driver. I just loved everything about cars, but I didn't have enough money to pursue my dreams. But as I started building up my investments, it allowed me to race in multiple championships and win countless trophies like this. I even got my helmet here, look. You sometimes see it at the back of the shots. How cool is that? My investments even allow me to spend time having fun making these YouTube videos, like the one you're watching. I don't currently make any money from this channel, and you can sit back and relax because I'm not going to try and sell you something at the end either. There are so many different investments out there. It's super easy to get distracted by the next shiny object. It's also confusing when you have someone telling you that this is the best thing, the latest and greatest, and if you don't invest, you could end up losing thousands. You may have heard of Bitcoin, penny stocks and short selling, but I found the key for me is not to get overwhelmed and distracted by the latest trends. Now you've got to face it, you are never going to be an expert at everything, and by consistently changing your investing strategy, you ultimately end up with less money, and at some point you're going to make a big mistake. I have nothing against experimenting, but I've kept my main investments very consistent over the years, and I make sure to only invest large sums of money into things that I understand completely. I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers, but I am going to be completely transparent about everything I've done that's helped me acquire a multi-million-dollar net worth. I'm a businessman and not a financial advisor, so I don't consider this financial advice. It's just what I've done and it's worked for me. First of all, you need to create more disposable income. At the end of the day, you need money to invest, and the more money you have, the better, especially during your 20s and 30s. Now, lots of people will say to you, save, save, save. Don't go out with your friends. Don't drink that overpriced coffee. Don't buy that nice car. I don't completely agree. Of course, saving is a big part of this, but you have to enjoy your life. There's really no point making yourself miserable just for the sake of saving an extra few dollars. You should focus most of your time and energy on increasing your income. You can do this by learning new valuable skills, having a side hustle, or building a scalable business. You don't have to settle for money you get from your 9-to-5 job. You need to be focusing your time on finding ways to supplement or replace it. When I was in my early 20s, I realised my income as a carpenter, earning less than $3 an hour, was never going to give me enough money to invest. It hardly even paid my bills. I needed to find a way to dramatically increase this, and this is when I started my journey into the business world. Investing and business really work hand in hand. The saying is very true. The more you learn, the more you earn. And most importantly, the more you can invest. Be really aware of your lifestyle and make sure to keep it in check. Just because you're earning more doesn't mean you should be spending more. Think of someone like, say, I don't know, Ed Sheeran. He has a huge amount of money, yet he keeps his lifestyle in check. He still enjoys the little pleasures of life. If you were happy making, let's say, $40,000 a year, and you managed to increase your income up to $100,000 a year, that means you've got an extra $60K. This should be going straight into a high interest savings account and then into your investments. You know, you don't need to be spending it. Well, there is one slight exception, and that's stage number 2. Pay off all your high interest debts. If you have student loans, credit card bills, or even a payday loan, then these are pulling you down. They're destroying your credit score, which ruins your ability to take advantage of good loans. By paying off these high interest debts first, you'll actually save more money than you could ever hope to make elsewhere. The next stage is to create a freedom fund. This is my name for an emergency fund that puts the power back in your hands. This freedom fund consists of 3 to 5 months of living expenses. It protects you if you decide to quit your job, as well as a lot of other situations such as recessions, depressions, or even worldwide epidemics. Okay, so you've increased your income by learning a valuable skill, or maybe invested in your own business. You've kept your lifestyle in check. You've paid off all your loans, and you've created the Freedom Fund. Now, and only now, is the time to start looking at other options. Let's start off with the lowest risk option. Index funds. An index fund is a collection of investments that you can put your money into and own a percentage of the entire thing. This gives you a fantastic diversification and protects you from poor stock choices. For example, let's say you got $1,000 and you invest it in, I don't know, let's say Apple stock. Because they're a big company, right? They're going to be safe. As soon as your money goes in, the company takes a turn for the worse, causing the stock price to crash. The result could be that you lose the majority of your investment. This is where index funds come in. Instead of owning just Apple stock, you could take that $1,000 and invest it in something like the S&P 500, which gives you small shares in Apple as well as Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Visa, Disney and many more. You're a shareholder of all these major companies. Now if something happened to Apple, it would be balanced out by the other investments in your index funds. Now lots of people will try and convince you that a mutual fund is superior. A mutual fund is very, very similar to an index fund, except it's controlled by a very smart person whose job it is to pick the stocks in the fund. The purpose of a mutual fund is to try and beat the market and get better results for the investor. However, in the vast majority of cases, you'd be much better off putting your money into a simple index fund with less risk and often a greater return. This is because index funds charge extremely low fees. The S&P 500 charges 0.07% annually, and mutual funds charge high fees, between 1 to 2% of your account balance annually. If you invested $10,000 into a mutual fund, then $200 would go straight into that fund manager's wallet every single year, even if he caused you to lose money through poor stock choices. On the flip side, if you had the same amount invested in the S&P 500 index fund, then only $7, yes, just $7 would be leaving your account annually. This is because index funds are passively managed and therefore don't have to pay a manager who may or may not be doing a good job. For long-term investments, I love using Vanguard index funds, as I like these, they're so easy to use. I'm not affiliated with Vanguard in any way, I just like the way it works. I also like to mix it up a little bit with some international funds and bonds to diversify my portfolio even more. The older you are, the more bonds I recommend you invest in. And I don't mean James Bond either, although he is pretty cool. The investment method I put the majority of my money into is real estate. I am much more of a real estate guy than a stock guy. I like real investments I can feel and touch, but I appreciate that it can be hard to buy properties with little money, but it's certainly something you should be saving for. My first property was a 1-bedroom apartment and I loved it. It was mine. It cost me around $50,000. And when I moved out, I decided to rent it $500 a month. I had this property for around about 10 years, and when I sold it for $150K. And after this, I was obsessed with the money that we could make from real estate. Now this is a good time to decide which type of investor you are. The first type is a capital gains investor. This is someone who likes to buy low and sell high and pocket the difference. These are investors that are interested in buying houses of auctions, or you may have seen the signs outside advertising that. Now I know I'm a bit of a boomer, but sometimes that can be a good thing. I've been around for a while and I've learned an awful lot along the way. Now your 20s are a fun part of your life, but they're extremely important at the same time. So here are 7 money-making habits I wish I'd known sooner, because if I did, I'd have made my first million a lot quicker, that's for sure. By watching this video all the way until the end, you'll be able to learn from my mistakes and hopefully do even better. Also, the last habit's a little bit controversial, so it might be worth sticking around for. Habit number 1 is embracing debt. I know this might sound confusing at first, as lots of people think that debt is bad, and you should avoid it like those online courses that cost $997. No, but seriously, it's one of the main reasons I was able to build my wealth from absolutely nothing to multi-millionaire. In my early 20s, I was building my businesses from the ground up, and I didn't have a lot of cash available to me, so I had to get very creative with my finances. I knew that if I wanted to grow my wealth, then I needed to control more assets. And the only way to do that was to use the power of other people's money. Now notice how I said I wanted more assets, and that's a very important point. Lots of people do the opposite and get into debt buying liabilities. Sadly, they're just digging themselves into a hole that they'll find it really hard to escape from. An easy way to find out if something is an asset or a liability is to figure out if the purchase is putting money into your pocket each month, or or instead just draining your wallet. My favourite thing about borrowing money is that I can buy other companies in cash, therefore getting a better price. I actually still do this today, as borrowing money is currently very cheap. How can borrowing money be cheap? This guy's a lunatic. Well, just think, if I can borrow cash at a 2% interest rate and put my money to work at an 8 to 10% return, then I'm ahead 6 to 8%. I just always make sure to run the numbers on my decisions and not leave myself too exposed to debt, so that if something went wrong, then I would be able to handle the repercussions. It's definitely true that you should be cautious of debt, but never fear using it to your advantage. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to smash that like button for the LTube algorithm, as it helps push this video out to a lot more people, and it's really appreciated. Habit number 2, being obsessed with success. I believe to become a millionaire, you must have laser focus, much like an Olympic athlete. I couldn't agree more with the quote, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you're going to be successful. Many of you aren't probably aware of this, but before I was known as a businessman, I was famous for flying radio control helicopters, and I competed to a very high standard all over the world. At one point, I won bronze medal at a world championships held in Indiana, USA. I would be obsessed with every little detail of my model. I did everything I could to win. I was absolutely relentless. To get to the top of anything, you need to put in the extra bit of work and then a little bit more. When I started my first business, I applied the same obsession. I set myself both short and long-term goals to keep focused at all times. Having a laser-like determination to succeed is key for your growth, and I was absolutely obsessed with hitting my sales targets. First, it was just to complete a year of business. Then it was to do last year's turnover in just 1 month. Then in just 1 week. But I always had the ultimate goal of becoming financially free. Even Elon Musk claims he regularly works 80 to 100 hours a week, and this is fueled by his obsession to hit his targets and meet his goals. How else will Tesla smash earnings reports and SpaceX land humans on Mars? The sad news is 60% of businesses fail within the first 3 years, and that's why focus obsession is so important. So stay focused and keep grinding. Amazon wasn't the biggest retailer overnight, and Kevin O'Leary said he would have laughed Elon Musk out of the building if he'd appeared on Shark Tank with a Tesla pitch. Habit number 3 is building income streams. As I've grown older, I must say my passive income streams have become very useful. I no longer have the energy of a 20-year-old, however, I don't have to, as I put in the work when I was younger, and now I can reap the benefits.
And you can make me do all the work as well.
Well, someone's got to. I created my first passive income stream accidentally when I refused to sell my apartment in my 20s. The apartment would have sold for around 40% less than I'd paid, and I wasn't interested in taking a hit like that, so I rented it out. This ended up being a great decision, as this paid the mortgage, and after 4 years the apartment sold for 60% more than I'd originally paid. So not only did I receive rent every single month totaling more than the mortgage payment, I then sold the property for a huge profit and put that money to work in the stock market. This really showed me the power of passive income, and I was hooked. Now, I admit the term passive income has become a bit of a buzzword online, and the truth is no income is truly passive, as there is always something that has to be done. However, some income sources are certainly more passive than others. The idea is to create something once and have it pay you as much as possible with minimal effort. Passive income is very addictive, especially when you wake up and you realise you just got paid for sleeping. A good way to start is to grab your free stock from the Public app, worth all the way up to $1,000 if you're in the USA. And if you want to grab $10 worth of free Bitcoin from Coinbase, then that's open to everyone. So I'll leave those links in the doobly-doo below. Habit 4, knowing when to quit. Now, I know this one might sound a bit strange. Quitting is usually seen as a bad thing, but in my experience it helped me go from a carpenter's apprentice earning less than $2 per hour to a millionaire by my late 20s. When I was working that minimum wage job and I first had an issue with my manager bullying me, I could have kept going and worked my way up the company gradually, but I decided to quit. That led me to starting my own business, and within a few months I was drowning in all the paperwork, so I decided to quit that job and I hired someone to help. And before I knew it, I'd replaced all the jobs I could with other people. This allowed me to focus on being the captain and steering the business in the right direction. The big lesson here is not to be too proud to quit when you don't like something or you feel the effort is not worth the reward. I see so many people struggling at university and working long days and nights for a degree they don't actually want. They have just been pushed down that path by teachers and parents. Of course, this isn't everyone, but in my opinion, quitting has its time and place, and there is no shame in admitting something isn't for you. This isn't to say that you should quit just because something's hard, but there has to be a reason to put in all the hard work. Don't let others shame you if you make the hard decision to move on to bigger and better things. After all, the opportunity costs of staying where you are could be much greater than you realise. Just imagine if I'd stayed working as a carpenter making wooden trash cans all my life. Nah, that'd never have happened. Habit number 5 is treating your body like a sports car. Brum brum. I know I might be sounding a bit like a fitness guru, but as cheesy as it is, without good health, you won't be able to unlock your full earning potential. I had to relearn this lesson recently when the pandemic hit. Lots of my staff were in lockdown, which meant I decided to work 3 months flat out. I was even in the warehouse packing and shipping orders with minimal staff as I didn't want to let my customers down. I actually worked 15 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 months straight. I got very what I'd say. This kind of thinking has led to schools giving out awards for just taking part. But I've got news for you. In life, you only get rewarded if you put in the hard work. And whether you like it or not, we're all in a massive competition. So if you aren't interested in playing, go and watch a Mr. Beast video instead. Age 18 to 24 years old. According to the survey of consumer finance conducted by the Federal Reserve, the average net worth of 18 to 24 year olds is approximately $28,707. However, this figure is heavily skewed upwards as the top 10% hold 70% of the wealth and the top 50% hold 98%. In fact, the median net worth of 18 to 24 year olds is only about $8,216. For the purpose of this video, we'll define rich as having a net worth 20% higher than the average. Therefore, if you want to be considered rich in this age bracket, you need a net worth of $34,448 or more. This doesn't mean that you need to have this amount of money sitting in your bank account. Instead, it comes from adding up all of your assets and taking away your liabilities. So here are some targets I think you should hit if you're serious about reaching this figure. First, you should create an emergency fund. Life is full of unexpected surprises. I know in my late teens my car engine exploded, which was a nightmare. That's why it's important to have 3 to 6 months worth of spending saved up in an emergency fund. This will give you a bit of peace of mind and a financial safety net in case you ever need it. Second, try to avoid bad debt. Of course, I understand student loans can sometimes be necessary if the job you're pursuing requires a degree, so this all depends on your individual circumstances. Third, get a credit card. A credit card can be a great tool for building your credit score and avoiding high interest rates, but it can also be a dangerous trap. Use it responsibly by paying off the balance in full each month. Fourth, invest in yourself. Your human capital is your greatest asset. Invest in yourself by developing your skills and knowledge. This will increase your earning potential, make you far more desirable in the workforce, and give you a better chance at success if you decide to start your own business. And fifth, learn about the stock market. The stock market can seem intimidating, but it's actually a great way to build wealth over time. Open a brokerage account and start learning about investing. Many brokerage firms offer free stocks to new customers. The best I've found is Moomoo, who are giving away 15 free stocks, each worth between $3,000 and $2,000. So take advantage of these offers to start building your portfolio. I'll leave some links down below where you can pick some up depending on where you are in the world. So overall, I'd rate this a 3 out of 5 on the difficulty scale. At this point, it's all about setting a great foundation for your life. I honestly feel that great financial habits are made during this age bracket. If you haven't done these things yet, then it's not too late, but it can be harder to get back on track. 25 to 29-year-olds. If we go back to the same study by the Federal Reserve, the average net worth of a 25 to 29-year-old is $49,388, and the median is even further behind at $7,512. This median net worth is actually lower than in the last age bracket. This could be due to many early 20-year-olds not understanding their finances and managing them correctly, causing the gap between the rich and the poor to grow. If you want to be considered rich between 25 and 29 years old, then you need to have a net worth of $59,265 or over by hitting the following milestones. First, save up 1 year's worth of your spending. This should be easy to access in the case of an emergency, but it doesn't have to all be in cash. My son Curtis likes to put some of his money into watches as he can wear them when he wishes. These can easily be sold if he ever needs the cash. Second, if you have any student loans, pay them off. In fact, if you ended up getting into any bad debt, then make sure this is all paid off. This will be a huge weight off your shoulders as these loans just bleed you dry. Third, you should have a credit score of 750 or higher. A good credit score is important for getting approved for loans and credit cards with favourable terms. This is very easy to do over the course of about 3 years if you use your credit card correctly by paying your bills on time and keeping your credit utilisation low. Fourth, you need to start making good money. I don't mind how you do it. It could be from a high paid job, a side hustle or a business. I mean, nowadays it's so easy to set up a simple website and start making passive income online. Hostinger are great and give you everything you need for under $3 per month. You can even get a free domain with their annual plans. I'll leave a link below with a 10% discount. Fifth, you should be investing 10 to 15% of your income. This could be in absolutely anything, such as stocks, real estate, watches, businesses, or dare I say it, crypto. You just have to pick the area you understand the most and run with it. Early on, don't try to be too diversified. While you're young, you can afford to take more risk. So find your specific area of interest and learn as much as you can about it. Sixth, you should be completely financially independent from your parents. I'm a big believer in staying at home for as long as you can, but you can only do this for so long. So overall, I'll rate this a 5 out of 5 on the difficulty scale. At this point, it's all about increasing your income and taking a few risks. This can be hard for a lot of people to do. They're either too shy to ask for a raise or start their own business, but this is the time to do it. The fatal error people make is they're focusing too much on saving and not enough on earning. I mean, you can save your way to being rich on a low wage, but you won't get there very fast. 30-year-olds. According to the study, the average net worth of 30-year-olds is $198,406 and the median is $45,315. This is when things really start ramping up. So if we use the 20% rule, then if you want to be rich, you should be aiming for a net worth of $238,087 or more. I know this sounds like quite a lot. However, if you can just focus on hitting these milestones, then it should take care of itself. First, save up 4 years worth of your spending. As I said before, this doesn't have to be all held in cash. To be honest, this would be a bit silly. You want it invested in liquid assets. Second, consider buying a house for yourself.
Black Monday.
They're calling it the Monday Massacre.
Wall Street had its biggest one-day drop in history.
The results of the decline will hit millions of people.
Up until this point, your friends probably thought you were some kind of genius, but now they're urging you to sell. But you ignore them, and slowly but surely the market recovers until
the Nasdaq index in freefall, down nearly 10%.
Driven by technology in general and the internet in particular.
Traders and investors shell-shocked.
Your friends are on their knees begging you to pull your money out, saying things like it's time to take your profits before you lose everything. But you hold strong and things start going back up until you're hit with...
It was one of the most profound events in generations with huge consequences.
Little did you know, you're in for the ride of a lifetime until
The global economy will contract by 3% this year, the worst downturn since the Great Depression.
surely this is the end of the stock market. But as things reopened, the market soared 27% from its low, setting new records. What a comeback. Something I didn't mention is the guy that invested his money in 1985 was actually me when I turned 18 years old. The average return over this time period was 11.23% per year. So if I'd have only invested $250 per month during this time, then I would have made $1,841,521.08. That's a return of over 6,000%. But between us, I invested a lot more than that. So now you understand the power of investing, I think it's time to jump into the details. Honestly, it's amazing how many people talk about investing, but don't actually show you how to do it. So I'm going to quickly walk you through how to invest in stocks on your phone. Of course, remember, I'm not a financial advisor. This is just the way I do it. And before you do any of this, make sure you have an emergency fund of 3 to 5 months of living expenses. The first thing on our list is to set up an account. A lot of people get stuck at this stage as there's a lot of different investment platforms out there and also different types of accounts. But trust me, it's much more simple than it first seems, especially now you can do it all online. When I first started investing, I had to phone up the stockbroker every time I wanted to buy a stock. Let's use the Trading 212 app. I'm going to be using my son's account as my account's pretty messy as it has a bunch of free shares. He's actually been running an experiment on here for the last 3 months, but we'll talk about that in a bit. The account you open should be a tax advantaged one. This means you won't have to pay any unnecessary taxes. These are known as stocks and shares ISAs in the UK and Roth IRAs in America. I think the UK option's much better as you can invest up to £20,000 a year without paying capital gains tax on your profits, and you can take out your money whenever you want. In contrast, Americans have to wait until they're old and retired, and they have a much lower limit of $6,500 per year. Feel free to use whatever app you like. This is just one of my personal favorites. Next, we need to deposit some money in order to start investing. Most apps make it pretty easy to deposit money. We just have to click these 3 lines and then select deposit funds. As you can see, this brings up a screen with lots of different options like instant bank transfer, debit card, and what we're going to use, Apple Pay. Let's just put in 400 so we can invest in some stocks together. Feel free to invest whatever you feel comfortable doing. Curtis, I'm going to need your face for the phone.
All right, hang on.
This next step is super important. Getting some free stocks. Since I was planning to talk about Trading 212 anyway, I reached out to them to see if they would be interested in sponsoring this portion of the video. They agreed and they're offering a free stock worth up to £100 to anyone that uses the code Tilbury when they create an account. Plus you can get more free shares by inviting your friends. Both of you will get a free share as long as they fund their account. So don't waste your invites and invite brokies. And also don't worry if you've already opened an account within the last 10 days. You can still use the promo code Tilbury in the app and receive your free share. Right. Now we need to plan a winning strategy. The first thing we need to remember is that investments go up and down, so it's very hard to pick winning individual stocks. That's why I prefer to invest in all of them. You probably think this sounds a bit crazy, but stay with me. I love listening to music. I'm a big Deacon Blue and Queen fan myself. But whatever you like, if you've ever listened to the radio or used Spotify, you'll be familiar with the music charts. The better the songs perform in sales and downloads, the higher up they go in the charts. On the other hand, if a song drops in popularity and sales, then it drops out of the charts. This is almost exactly the same as investing in an index fund. All you have to do is switch out the songs for companies. Let's take the S&P 500 for example. This is a list of around 500 of the largest public companies in the USA. The big dogs being Amazon, Google, Apple and Tesla. And just like the music charts, if a company does poorly, then they risk being removed from the list. Here's the cool part about an index fund. With just one click, you're not just investing in 1 or 2 companies, but in every single company on the list. So if one doesn't perform very well, your money's okay as you're spread across all of them. So how can we put this into practice? Well, we need to automate our long-term investments. Remember I said my son had been running a little experiment for the last 3 months on his account? Well, he's been investing £5 into the S&P 500 every day. Why £5? Because that's about the average price of a Starbucks coffee. Automating your investments like this is a great idea, as it means you can just set it and forget it. His portfolio is actually doing pretty well. As you can see in the green, his return so far is £36.46, and that's a return of 5.03%. Not bad for a little experiment. Ever since. I started out with no qualifications and no money, but still managed to become a multi-millionaire. And a big part of that was down to avoiding the 7 things I'm going to be sharing with you today. The first thing to avoid is working for only money. Imagine for a moment that you got a boring but well-paid job. You quickly start stacking some nice cash as your earnings grow. Your friends will think that you're absolutely killing it, and your parents will probably be pretty proud too. However, over time, your earning potential would start to plateau. This is path A. Now, imagine instead you get a challenging but lower paid job. You might struggle for a couple of years as you improve and adapt. You may even struggle to pay the bills. Your friends will probably think you're falling behind, and your parents may not agree with the path you've taken. However, over time, your earning potential will start going through the roof. This is path B. So, what's the difference between these two examples? Well, path A prioritizes money early on, whereas path B prioritizes 2 key things: skills and equity. Every self-made millionaire I know has followed path B, as it's the only way to build that kind of wealth. As I mentioned, I left school at 16 with no qualifications. However, I immediately went out looking for jobs and actually got offered more than 5 opportunities. So I had a big decision to make. Which should I choose? I decided to become a carpenter's apprentice. The pay wasn't great, but I knew the skills I'd learned would be extremely valuable, so I prioritised those. There was no way I was going to get equity in the business, but at least I was working for more than just money. That job taught me a lot, and although I was forced to quit after being relentlessly bullied by my manager, I still use many of those skills today when I'm designing my best-selling brand of radio-controlled planes that I sell across the world. By learning a wide range of high-income skills, it makes it almost impossible for you to ever be broke again, as you become your greatest asset. I like to think every job I had when I was younger added to my skill set like a Swiss Army knife. Nowadays, I'd recommend prioritising online-based high-income skills such as copywriting, video editing and coding. The demand for these skills is only growing, and I can speak from experience that there is a huge skill shortage at the moment. Sure, there are lots of people doing those things, however, 99% of them are just not up to standard. Honestly, your competition really isn't that tough. Now, let's move on to the second thing, equity. This just means owning a percentage of a business so you can benefit from the profits. My Radio Control model brand is a perfect example of this. You can gain equity in a few different ways. The most obvious way, and the way I did it, was to start the business myself. However, you can also gain it by working for it if you're extremely skilled in certain areas. This is known as sweat equity. Lastly, you can purchase equity in certain businesses, although I wouldn't recommend this as much unless you have the skills that can help accelerate that business forward. My friend Simon Squibb often goes around in public telling people to start their own businesses or ask for equity from their boss. While I 100% agree with the sentiment, you need to have some self-awareness with this. Firstly, it's worthwhile working for someone to gain skills before starting a business of your own. Secondly, you need to be realistic. I didn't think for a moment that I'd get equity in the carpentry business when I was an apprentice. So when you ask, make sure you have a solid case for why you deserve it and how you can add value to the business instead of just taking from it. You need to first focus on becoming someone worthy of equity. The main takeaway here is that too many people get blinded by money, forgetting the importance of skills and equity. This is the biggest trap. The more you obsess over earning just money, the less you'll likely make in the long run. The second thing to avoid is buying a luxury lifestyle. Picture yourself cruising through Dubai's sun-drenched streets in a bright yellow Lamborghini. You pull up to a swanky restaurant and order a $500 fillet steak without batting an eyelid. How does imagining that lifestyle make you feel? Pretty successful, right? Well, here's the truth. Most people you see living this way are far from successful. The majority are paying for cars they can't afford. taking trips to Dubai on credit cards they'll spend 5 months paying off, and ordering steaks at Salt Bay's restaurant that leave them with a bill they can't handle. These people are living a lie, pretending to be rich while drowning in debt. It's all smoke and mirrors, as it's much easier to impress others on social media than build real wealth. Seeing people live these luxury lifestyles might tempt you to start playing the flexing game too, as you feel like everyone is living a better life than you. However, this is far from the reality. In fact, 37% of Americans can't afford unexpected expenses over $400. 39% worry they can't pay their bills. And 60% of American households can't afford to buy a new car. Once you've made your millions, you can buy whatever you want. That's the point of becoming wealthy. However, in the early days, you can't live like a king and build wealth at the same time. Instead of buying depreciating items like flashy cars, designer clothes and dining in expensive restaurants, invest in assets such as stocks, shares, crypto and real estate. These assets will increase in value and generate income that you can then use to do whatever you want. The third thing to avoid is doing everything yourself. You might be really great at what you do, but no matter how hard you try, you'll never be able to outcompete a group of talented people working together. Look at anyone who's made it big in sports or business. If you do some digging, you'll see they all had help. Let's take Elon Musk as an example. On the surface, it might appear like he's a genius entrepreneur who's achieved everything single-handedly. However, that couldn't be further from the truth. He was part of the group that launched PayPal. When eBay acquired PayPal for $1.5 billion in 2002, these newly wealthy tech experts spread across the industry like a virus. Now they're known as the PayPal Mafia, as they've become such a powerful group. After leaving PayPal, they started many successful companies. These include big names like YouTube, Yelp, LinkedIn, and SpaceX. They often invest in each other's projects and give advice. But what if you're not aiming to launch the next billion-dollar company and instead just want to earn some extra money with a side hustle? Well, a lot of older business owners are kind of lost when it comes to everything tech-based and using the internet for their companies. I mean, a lot of them don't even know there's online tools for literally everything, whether it's managing your team, handling invoices, keeping track of projects, or even building a website. I don't blame them, as back in the day, we didn't have any of these things, but now the younger generation has a real advantage. So if these older business owners don't know how to do a lot of this online stuff, and they understand they can't do everything themselves, guess who they need? You. You can help them bring their businesses into the 21st century and make a lot of money in the process. It's all well and good saying this, but how could you actually do it? Well, if you want to give this a try, then I'd recommend using an all-in-one management platform. Odoo is a great choice as it includes the tools I just mentioned and more all in one place. Here's a great example of a website that needs a proper update. It looks like it was built over 10 years ago. Let's jump on Odoo and make something a bit more up to date. So I'm going to go over here and select the e-commerce app option. Now let's fill this in. I want a business website. There we go. And I want for my gardening business. After this, I've got the option to choose my color palette here, but instead, I'm just going to add their logo so that Odoo just builds a palette based on their brand colors. Now we've got to pick a theme. All these look pretty good, so let's go with this one. I can use the drag and drop feature to easily edit the page and customize images. They also have this cool AI tool to help me out with words. Let's fast forward about 30 minutes and I'll have something pretty cool to show you. Check this out, it's way better than the old website in my opinion. You could make some serious cash helping out older business owners with all the different apps on Odoo, or even use it to manage your own business. I reached out to Odoo to see if they wanted to sponsor this portion of the video. They agreed and are also giving you your first application free for life with unlimited support and hosting. And the cherry on top, Odoo offers a personalized domain name for 1 year. So if you want to give this a try, then check out the link in the description. The fourth thing to avoid is having too many inputs. Do you ever feel like you're being pulled in a million different directions? This happens with everything in life, from side hustles to fitness training. Everyone seems to have a different opinion on what you should be focusing on. It can look a little bit like this. This is you, and these are the people telling you what they think you should be focusing on. For the sake of simplicity, let's just call them inputs. All these inputs create hundreds of paths you could follow, like becoming a doctor, entrepreneur, joining a family business, getting a stable 9-to-5 job, traveling, and having a family. Let's call these your potential paths. The sheer number of these pathways can create something called cognitive overload, which is where your brain simply can't cope with the overwhelming amount of information and choices. So what's the solution? Well, I've always started with my end destination in mind and worked backwards. Of course, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in the future. However, I had a decent idea. I then made sure to only listen to inputs that helped me reach those targets. The clearer your goal, the easier it becomes to select the right inputs to help you achieve it. So limit the number of opinions you receive and prioritize quality over quantity. Most people have too many opinions being thrown at them, but not from experts. Cut out general opinions and instead seek expert advice. This could come from a mentor, someone successful in your field, or even educational videos from experts like myself. By doing this, you'll get more valuable, focused, and specific guidance for your end goal. Remember, even when you work your way backwards, you still don't need to know everything at once. Fully listen and implement what you learn from an input, and then when you're facing another challenge, you can seek out more inputs that will help you overcome it. If you don't do this, then you'll get mental fatigue, which can lead to decision paralysis, where you find yourself unable to take action or move forward. Some people might even mistake this for being lazy, but in reality, your brain just gets overwhelmed. The fifth thing to avoid is being ego-driven. Let me start by saying this. Arrogant people won't even finish this video. They think they already know everything, so why bother sticking around? But that's exactly the problem. Arrogance blinds you to the opportunities that could genuinely change your life. Ego-driven people are often too focused on the big picture, constantly dreaming of the end goal. This might sound productive, but it's a dangerous trap. When you're always looking too far ahead, you end up overlooking the small but crucial steps that lead to true success. For example, some might be tempted to scroll through this video just to see all 7 things rather than sitting down and actually absorbing the knowledge in each one. But by doing so, they miss out on the valuable insights that could fast track their journey. When you're too egotistical, you start to believe that you don't need advice from others, especially those who might know more. Every time there's a global crisis, most people panic. They're all over the place. Smart people take advantage of the situation. That's why these strategies will work whenever there is fear and panic around. So today I'm going to be running through how you can make millions from the coronavirus market crash and any recession causing crisis in the future. By having the right finances in place, I was able to ride out the last 2 recessions and grow my business back to full strength in an incredibly short amount of time. Before implementing anything, make sure to speak to a financial advisor about your individual situations. Let's first break down what a market crash is and why it's happening. Our economy has seen incredible growth over the last decade. It's been up, but now recently it's come to an end and it started to crash. Now, when companies are making more money, it of course creates more demand for jobs. And when more people have jobs, they earn more money. Now, this chain of events is extremely delicate. If just one link breaks, such as people not spending money, then the whole system, it just collapses around us. We are currently seeing a chain of events break down on a huge scale, partly because of the virus, but mainly because of the mass fear caused by the media. It's not the end of the world, like the media would like you to believe. Their main aim is to get more people watching and reading the news, as they can make more money from advertising revenue that they depend on. On top of this, there are huge disruption problems to supply chains, especially people like Apple and Amazon, who depend on all of these items coming from China. It causes a trickle-down effect. This is why you may have seen bare shelves in the shop and people even fighting over toilet rolls. Who would have ever thought that? Lots of investors see this unfolding and start to panic. They sell off stocks and shares. Now, the biggest takeaway from this is that fear is the number 1 enemy of the stock market. But you know what? It could be your number 1 friend. In situations like these, you have to adapt, just like a virus. Look for the opportunity and don't become paralyzed or overanalyze everything. Be smart and take action. Even if it's not perfect, just take that action. Without any further ado, let's jump in. Number 1, reduce your spending and build a safety fund. Be unbelievably stingy. Put it all towards building a safety fund. If you don't already have one, it's the most important thing you need to do. This safety fund should consist of 3 to 5 months of your living expenses and only used in an absolute emergency. Now, this safety fund is like your protective shield. You can hold it up, hold it against everything. It's going to protect you against unexpectedly getting fired or if you have a slow month with your own business. But most importantly, fear won't affect you in the same way. Number 2, index funds. Now you have your safety fund, you can afford to invest the extra money that you have coming in into an index fund. These funds are one of the safest long-term investment strategies you can take advantage of. Now, index funds are comprised of lots of different companies, therefore they can go up or down with the market. Because people are currently scared, the market has dropped in value dramatically. Now, my prediction is the market will be worth a lot more money in a year from now. If things start to improve with the current situation and people start getting better, then it will kickstart the chain of events and the market will bounce back dramatically. I wouldn't recommend this strategy to anyone that isn't prepared to invest for at least 5 years. Now, one of the most popular index funds is called the S&P 500. This is comprised of the biggest 500 companies in the USA, such as Apple and Amazon and Microsoft. Now, the amazing thing is that buying and holding this fund for a 20-year period has never lost anyone any money. Just let that sink in. Over a 20-year period, it has never produced a negative result. So come on, Mark, I hear you say, how do I get started? Now, I love using Vanguard index funds. You can just jump in their website, it's really easy, open an account, you can pick your own risk tolerance. Now, a general rule here is the older you are, the less risk you should take. Don't be put off by the complicated words. Do some extra research around what funds are best for you and start investing consistently each month, the same amount, just keep investing. If you can make it automated, then even better. Like the saying says, the best time to plant a tree was last year, but the second best is to do it today and get going. The main thing to remember is don't panic when your investment goes down. Don't even look at it, because if you leave it there for long enough, you're going to make a